One of South America's most famous cryptids is the living ground sloth. These giant prehistoric animals have been reported to exist all over the continent. There are also lesser known but equally mysterious reports of them in North America as well. Here are these bizarre and sometimes terrifying stories. Central America is allegedly home to the cave cow, a strange creature theorized to be a ground sloth. It's most well known for a deadly encounter two men had with it in Belize. They had been walking in the remote wilderness back in the 1890s when one of the men, Frank, noticed something was moving the trees. His friend Joe went out to investigate whatever it was. Shortly after, Frank heard a scream from the woods. He rushed over to see what happened and found Joe bleeding out on the ground. Joe weakly told him that he had been attacked by the devil himself before dying. His body had been scratched and mangled up by some sort of unknown creature. Frank went to avenge his friend and followed a trail to a nearby cave. He found bizarre tracks that he described as almost exactly like the thumb and two first fingers of a gigantic human hand, each digit armed with a great claw. He planned to return to the cave when it was light out and he was better prepared. However, he eventually became lost and had to return to civilization. This wouldn't be the last encounter with the monster. In 1932, archaeologist Thomas Gann saw a mysterious creature running through the trees. He described it as a black-furred, shaggy animal that was absolutely massive. The only other detail he was able to see was that it had a white mane around its face. Gann, who was a friend of Frank's, believed that he had seen a living ground sloth. His encounter also occurred in the same region that Joe was attacked in. Cryptozoologist Ivan Sanderson connected these reports with an old legend known as the cave cow. It was a giant lizard-like creature in the Mayan people's folklore. So why did he believe it was a ground sloth? Well, part of the description of the legend was that it was covered in hair, something very unlizard-like. There were also multiple species of ground sloths that inhabited caves in Belize, like Zybalbonyx. Add in the clawed track that Frank found, and the sloth identity makes more sense. Ground sloth mania first took hold in the United States all the way back in 1797. That's when Thomas Jefferson, yes, the President Thomas Jefferson, examined strange bones that had been shown to him. He named them megalonyx, and he believed they came from some sort of giant lion that still lived in the United States. With a little more research, he and the scientific community realized they actually came from a species of giant sloth. When the Lewis and Clark expedition kicked off, Jefferson told them to keep an eye out for rare believed extinct animals along the way, like megalonyx. While they didn't see anything, there is one strange tidbit from Jefferson that remains unexplained. In the same letter where he acknowledges that megalonyx was a ground sloth, he also states that there was some evidence of their survival. What this evidence was remains unknown. It would be some time before concrete sightings began being reported. One of the most fascinating of these sightings was reported to John Keel, author of the Mothman Prophecies. He was told that a teen and his family saw white-furred ground sloths in New York State back in the 1960s. They said the sloths were around 15 feet or 4.5 meters in height. They would move either alone or in pairs, and even people outside his family had seen them. Years later, the Moth Boys podcast managed to track down the person who originally wrote to Keel. They interviewed him, and he reiterated that he had seen the animals standing by his story. They even published a whole book on the subject where he shared even more stories called The White Monsters of Sherman. He also mentioned that his family had even seen young ground sloths as well. A less detailed story would come on a Minnesota radio show back in 1986. A man had called into a program about northern Minnesota, and he had a bizarre story to tell. A year before, he had apparently encountered something similar to the extinct ground sloth. He had startled it and driven it out of the woods. Unfortunately, the call seems to have not been recorded. We only know about it because of Bigfoot investigator Don Peterson, who happened to be listening at the time. Still, biologist Ben Roche pointed out that Peterson probably didn't make up the call. If a Bigfoot investigator was going to make up a sighting, it would likely be a Bigfoot sighting. One very controversial theory in Bigfoot circles is that at least some Bigfoot reports are actually of living ground sloths. Bigfoot eyewitnesses already get a lot of criticism. So when people suggest that they may have actually seen a ground sloth, there's some pushback. In certain sightings, however, a ground sloth identity makes a lot of sense. Take this 2002 sighting from Florida. Resident Patricia Edwards was driving through the green swamp in the central part of the state. Then she saw an absolutely bizarre creature cross the road in front of her. She didn't talk about her sighting at first, and only came forward when skunk ape reports became popular. But this wasn't exactly the typical skunk ape sighting. Here's what she said. If I live to be a couple hundred years old, the story will not change. There was very little traffic, and I see something that ran out in front of me. It looked like a giant sloth, except I know they're slow moving. This one moved fast, and dove down into the edge of the road into a ditch area. It started out running, galloping on fours like a dog, but when it dove, I could see the arms come up. It was sizable, almost like a bear, but not a bear, not the way its arms moved. Could this have been a ground sloth? We don't know for sure how fast ground sloths moved. They were likely faster than the tree-dwelling sloths, though, being adapted for ground movement. Their living cousins that move on the ground like armadillos can also get surprisingly fast. So it's not out of the question that a ground sloth could quickly cross the road. There is one interesting similarity between most skunk ape reports in North America and living ground sloth reports in South America. They smell terrible. There are also some obscure theories that cryptids other than Bigfoot are actually sloths. Take sheep squatch for example. It was a white-furred monster that spooked multiple campers in West Virginia. One man recalled the creature charging at him and his friends while they were camping. The creature seemed to eye them up before rushing at them, scattering the campers. Then it let out a terrible shriek and disappeared into the night. The large shape, color, claws, and fur led to blogger Robert Klein theorizing that it was a ground sloth. But there are two big issues with this theory. Many reports describe sheep squatch having a pair of gigantic horns. No currently known species of ground sloth have horns. Klein theorized that they could have developed them for defense, but it would be a big jump for sloths to evolve horns in only around 10,000 years. Strangely, there are multiple cases of people allegedly capturing ground sloths. There's a brief mention of Native Americans capturing a strange creature near Silver City, Nevada in 1864. It was described as a gorilla with a rabbit's head, about 3.5 feet or 1 meter tall. Cryptozoologist Richard Muirhead pointed out that this description had a lot of similarities with a young ground sloth. There's no other information about it besides that it lived in the mountains. A rancher in Arizona had captured a strange creature while in the Casa Grande Valley in 1935. It had the snout of a peccary, bear-like feet, mouse-like ears, and a very thick tail. It was roughly 3 times larger than a fox. The rancher called it a hodag, a reference to a strange creature captured in northern Wisconsin that turned out to be a hoax. After a number of people had a look at it, one came up with an interesting theory about its identity. A rancher had been looking in a book of various animals, and his eyes settled upon an entry for the Edentata. This was an old name used for various animal families, including the ground sloth. The people realized that they had captured a living ground sloth from South America. One man even compared the cry of the captured animal to the sound a ground sloth was supposed to make, like a crying baby. The only difference is that the animal didn't have claws, with one man suggesting they had worn away as the creature traveled from South America to North America. But that's where the trail for the story goes cold. The last known report was that it was being held at a ranch. Then came the Beast of Boonville incident in 1936. When a local fisherman's dog was attacked by a creature larger than a bear, he set out to capture it. He set traps all over the woods of Indiana to try and stop the creature. Both he and his wife had seen the animal, which they described as almost like an ape and definitely not a bear. Various hunting parties were formed, though none of them were able to find it. One police dog was also attacked during the search. Then a man came rushing into a local newspaper office with an important announcement. The year before, he and his uncle had been hunting in Mexico. Then they captured a rare living ground sloth. They had tried to transport it, but it escaped around Evansville, Indiana. Another rumor going around at the time was that the sloth escaped from a circus. Of course, I don't know of any circuses that had extinct giant sloths. One local had a different idea. A person wrote to the paper with a theory. Farmers made the whole story up. It was blackberry season, and the person figured that farmers wanted to keep people away from their bushes. Whether or not it really was a Scooby-Doo plot, the reports eventually stopped. While there are no known pieces of video evidence of the ground sloth, there is one piece of photo evidence for it. This was taken in Virginia back in 2013. It immediately got some attention as an alleged Bigfoot photo, as some people believed it was one crawling on all fours. Others suggested that it was a bear with some sort of disease like mange. But a small number of people came up with a third theory, that it was a ground sloth. They noted that what many people assumed was the leg of the animal may have actually been a tail. They also pointed out that the creature had sloth-like fur and appeared to be grabbing something with hands instead of paws. Personally, I fully agree with the people who think it's a bear. Bears with mange, disease, or just shedding can look very strange. I also don't see enough detail to conclude that it has hands. I'm generally skeptical of ground sloths currently being alive in states with huge active hunting cultures. There are so many trail cameras set up in the US that it would take either a small animal or one that lived in a very remote area to hide from them. I think we'd be seeing way more than just one photo. The province of Nova Scotia has an old legend that may be related to the ground sloth. It's known as the giant squirrel and has roots in Mi'kmaq lore, a tribe that has lived in the area for millennia. Here's how author Michael Bradley describes the stories. Mi'kmaqs live in bark teepees, and these pesky giant squirrels sometimes descended on their villages to devour these teepees or wigwams. The giant squirrels didn't harm the people, but they ate up their houses. Eventually, these giant squirrels disappeared, and the Mi'kmaqs were left in peace. Bradley theorized that these giant squirrels weren't just stories, but were based on the mostly vegetarian ground sloths. Sloth fossils aren't known in Nova Scotia specifically, but they did reach pretty far northeast into the United States. The problem is, every species of ground sloth is believed to have been extinct in North America since 9000 BC. Bradley believed that the legend of the giant squirrel was only a few thousand years old. In his research, he found that similar legends of the Mi'kmaq could be traced to around 500 AD, which could show that ground sloths held on for far longer than previously believed. Of course, this is all speculation, and with oral history, it can be difficult to tell how far back a legend truly reaches. I'll end the video with a fantastic quote from a Mi'kmaq website. The stories told by the storytellers, the drums, the dancers, and the singers are all part of our world. The stories may come from a specific people, but that also makes them part of the stories of all people on the earth. We help to keep the story alive when we hear it. We have our place in the story, and in turn, we all have our story to tell. Whatever you think of ground sloth cryptids and if they're real or not, I hope you enjoyed hearing about these sightings and legends. Thank you very much for watching. Special thank you to my Patreons Gerhard, Chaz, Wild World, Jason Cook, Oreo, Candy Trash Panda, John R., Mackindude, and Alaric. If you'd like to support me on Patreon and get input into future videos, a link will be below. I'd also really appreciate you liking and subscribing, as well as sharing the video with someone you think may also enjoy it. As always, a big thank you to the many artists featured in this video, especially Breadbox. A link to the works of many cryptid artists will be in the description as well. That's all for this video. Happy hunting, and I'll see you in the next one.